We live in a world obsessed with outcomes, promotions, titles, wealth, recognition. And while those things are not inherently wrong, the way we chase them often is. We grow up being asked, what do you want to be? And so naturally we start thinking in terms of achievement. Doctor, CEO, millionaire. The problem is that these are outcomes, not identities. And that question, what do you want to be, conditions us to chase status rather than self-awareness. Here's the truth. Success isn't something you chase like a finish line. It's something you attract by the kind of person you become. Most people set goals around things they want to get. Few set goals around who they want to become. That's the shift. That's the mindset that separates those who constantly burn out trying to get ahead from those who seem to naturally rise in life, who draw success toward them like a magnet. They aren't running harder. They're aligned deeper. Yeah, let's start with a simple truth. You can't attract what you're not prepared to receive. That's not a motivational slogan. That's the way life works. If you haven't done the work to become trustworthy, opportunities won't trust you. If you haven't done the work to grow resilient, challenges will break you. If you haven't clarified your values, the world will offer you things that pull you further away from yourself. But when you do the internal work, when you lead with who you are rather than what you want, the game changes. You stop chasing success, it starts gravitating toward you. There's a difference between ambition and alignment. Ambition is what pushes you forward. Alignment is what keeps you grounded. And while ambition can be loud and impressive, alignment is quiet and powerful. Alignment comes from knowing who you are, what you believe, what kind of impact you want to have, and what you're willing to walk away from. It's not about being perfect, it's about being clear. And when you lead with who you are, you create clarity. And clarity is attractive. Think about the people who inspire you the most. The ones who don't just accomplish things, but who seem to move with a kind of calm certainty. They're not trying to prove anything. They're not chasing applause. They know who they are. And because of that, others naturally follow them. That's not charisma. That's character. That's what happens when you lead from within. Now, this isn't just about professional success. This is about life, relationships, purpose, peace of mind. Because when you chase success from a place of insecurity, even when you get it, it doesn't satisfy you. It becomes a drug. You need more of it to feel worthy. But when success comes as a byproduct of becoming more of yourself, it fulfills you in a completely different way. It affirms rather than replaces your sense of identity. Too often, we try to act like the kind of person who gets results. We fake confidence, we learn tricks, we network for advantage. And maybe some of that works for a while, but there's always a cost to pretending. It's exhausting. It's unsustainable. Eventually, your mask becomes heavier than your ambition can carry. The solution isn't better acting. The solution is deeper authenticity. Success doesn't require you to be someone else. It requires you to be more of who you already are. But that version of you, the version that's calm under pressure, focused in chaos, resilient in rejection, that version doesn't show up by accident. You have to build that. Brick by brick, day by day. That's the internal work. The reflection, the discipline, the courage to say no to things that don't align, even if they look shiny on the surface. That's what most people skip. And that's why most people keep chasing. Imagine if instead of setting goals like, I want to make 6 figures, or I want a promotion, we set goals like, I want to be the kind of person who solves problems with empathy, or I want to become someone who makes others feel seen and heard, or I want to lead in a way that builds trust, not fear. What if that was the metric? What if we started measuring who we're becoming, not just what we're achieving? Because the truth is, the people who attract success aren't the loudest in the room. They're the most grounded. They're the ones who can stay curious when others get defensive. They're the ones who admit when they're wrong, who ask good questions, who take responsibility, not credit, who show up with consistency, not just intensity. That's who success wants to follow. And when I say success, I'm not talking just about money or power. I'm talking about meaningful relationships, lasting impact, inner peace. It all starts with this: get clear on who you want to be, not just what you want to do. Start asking yourself better questions. Not how can I get ahead, but what values do I want to embody? Not how do I win, but what do I want to be remembered for? The questions you ask will shape the life you live. So if you want to attract success, stop asking what you need to do differently. Start asking who you need to become. Because the world doesn't respond to your goals. It responds to your energy, your values, your consistency. And when those things are aligned, success doesn't need to be chased, it finds you. We're taught from a young age to pursue things: a better job, more money, recognition, status. We chase these goals believing that once we arrive, we'll finally feel successful. But what if success doesn't work that way? What if success isn't something you chase, but something you attract? That idea may seem abstract at first, but look around. You'll notice something strange about the people who are truly thriving, not just in their careers, but in their lives. They're not scrambling. They're not constantly pitching themselves. They're not the loudest in the room. And yet, opportunities find them. People trust them. Doors open. Not because they're lucky, but because they've become the kind of person that success is naturally drawn to. They've done the work to become magnetic. Success, contrary to popular belief, is not a prize. It's not sitting at the top of a hill waiting for you to conquer it. It's more like energy. Something that moves toward authenticity, consistency, and clarity. When you become the kind of person who lives in alignment with what they believe, with how they act, with what they stand for, success begins to move toward you. You stop chasing it, you start attracting it. This idea requires a mindset shift. Most people operate with a transactional mindset. If I do this, I'll get that. And so their energy is always pointed outward, toward pleasing, persuading, proving. But attraction isn't transactional, it's relational. It's not about manipulating results, it's about becoming real enough that people and opportunities trust you. And trust is the foundation of all success. People don't follow you because you're impressive. They follow you because they believe in you. And they believe in you because you're consistent, you're authentic, and you're driven by something deeper than achievement. You can't fake magnetism, not the kind that lasts. You can be flashy for a season. You can put on the right clothes, say the right things, play the part. But true attraction, deep, sustainable attraction, isn't about performance. It's about presence. It's about being so grounded in who you are that the right people feel safe around you, the right partners, the right clients, the right relationships. They all begin to orbit around your character, not your credentials. There's a reason people follow those who are clear about their why. It's because that clarity creates trust. And where there is trust, there is loyalty, momentum, and results. It's easy to get caught up in the noise. Algorithms, trends, constant self-promotion. But the truth is, none of that creates sustainable success. What does? Showing up with purpose. Over and over again. Not perfectly, but consistently. You attract success when you live your values, even when no one's watching. When you treat people well, not because they can help you, but because it's who you are. When your work reflects more than skill, it reflects soul. That kind of energy is rare. And because it's rare, it's powerful. People notice, not all at once, not overnight, but steadily, quietly. Like gravity. Think about gravity for a moment. You don't see it, you don't hear it, but it's always working. Always pulling. That's what happens when you live with integrity. When you stop chasing and start aligning. The right people begin to move toward you, not because you reached out, but because you stood still in who you are. This doesn't mean you stop trying or striving. It means you redirect your focus. Instead of asking, how do I get more attention? Ask, how do I become more valuable? Instead of asking, how can I impress them? Ask, how can I serve them? Because service is magnetic, value is magnetic, humility is magnetic. These are the things that create lasting success, not the spike of a viral moment, but the deep roots of a meaningful life. Now, it's important to say this: attraction doesn't always feel fast. It doesn't always feel exciting. In fact, it can be incredibly quiet. And that's what makes it powerful. Chasing feels busy, urgent, reactive. Attraction feels intentional, disciplined, patient. It's the difference between running in circles and walking in purpose. Success moves toward people who are clear, not chaotic. So the real work isn't just in strategy, it's in stillness, in taking time to reflect, to ask the hard questions. What do I really value? What kind of energy do I bring into the room? Am I building something that lasts or just something that looks good right now? These are not easy questions, but they're necessary ones. Because success doesn't want who you pretend to be. It's drawn to who you really are. It's easy to want the outcomes without doing the internal work, but attraction doesn't come from ambition alone. It comes from alignment, from becoming so rooted in who you are that people trust you without you having to convince them. That's not marketing, that's truth. And people can feel the difference. If you want to attract success, don't ask what the world needs from you. Ask what makes you come alive, and then build that. Because the people the world needs most are not those who mastered the hustle, they're the ones who mastered themselves. So stop sprinting toward the next big thing. Start building the kind of foundation that success recognizes. Lead with your heart, not your highlight reel. Stay consistent in your values even when the results aren't immediate. And remember, you don't find success by reaching higher. You attract it by going deeper. That's the shift. That's the truth. Success isn't a finish line, it's a follower. It goes where meaning lives. It moves toward authenticity. It finds the ones who've stopped performing and started living. We live in a culture that's fascinated by titles, obsessed with accolades, and addicted to recognition. We're taught to build impressive resumes, to chase prestigious positions, to collect credentials like trophies on a shelf. But none of those things guarantees success. None of those things build trust. Because people don't follow your degree. They don't stay because of your job title. They don't believe in your resume. They believe in your character. And here's the most important truth. Character is not what you put on display when the spotlight's on. It's what shows up when no one's watching. There's a misconception that success belongs to those with the best pedigree, the most education, the right connections, the longest list of accomplishments. But real sustainable success is never just a function of how much you know or where you've been. It's a function of how you show up in the world, of how you treat people, of what you stand for when it's inconvenient. That's character. And character is the foundation that success stands on. Credentials may open doors, but character is what keeps them open. In fact, we've all seen it. People who looked great on paper, but fell apart under pressure. People who got promoted because of what they achieved, only to lose the trust of those they were meant to lead. That happens when we value image over integrity. And when that happens, success becomes hollow. The truth is, credentials are easy to measure. They're neat. They fit on a LinkedIn profile. But character is complex. It's harder to quantify. It doesn't show up in bullet points. It shows up in moments. Like when you admit you're wrong, or when you take the blame instead of passing it. Or when you tell the truth, even when a lie would be more convenient. And it's in those moments, the quiet ones, that people decide who you really are. Success follows character because trust follows character. And trust is the currency of leadership, of influence, of impact. It doesn't matter how talented you are, how smart you are, how charming you are. If people don't trust you, they won't follow you. They may admire you from a distance. They may applaud your accomplishments, but they won't commit. They won't invest. They won't stand with you when things get hard. That's the difference. And here's where many people get stuck. They believe that if they just collect enough external validation, it will compensate for what they haven't built internally. But it doesn't work that way. The most impressive looking tree will still fall if the roots are deep. And people can feel the difference between someone who's built a brand and someone who's built a backbone. Now, that doesn't mean credentials don't matter. Of course they do. It's important to work hard, to develop skills, to earn trust through competence. But the point is, credentials are just the starting line, not the finish. They qualify you to be in the room. Your character decides whether people want you to stay there. It's easy to be impressive. It's harder to be trusted. And in a world where trust is rare, being trusted becomes your greatest competitive edge. Think about the people who've had the greatest impact on your life. Chances are, it wasn't their degree that moved you. It wasn't their resume. It was something about their presence, their conviction, their consistency. It was the way they made you feel. That's character. That's what makes someone unforgettable. That's what builds loyalty, not just attention. So the real question is not how do I become more impressive? The real question is how do I become more trustworthy? Not how do I get more followers, but how do I earn deeper respect? That's where the real work is. And that work happens in private, when no one's clapping, when no one's looking, when the easy thing and the right thing don't line up. That's when character is built. Character is formed through choices, through how you respond when you're tired, when you're misunderstood, when you're under pressure. It's forged in those unglamorous, inconvenient, often unnoticed decisions. And ironically, the people who build their character quietly are the ones who attract success loudly. Because when people know you're consistent, when they know you're grounded, when they know you do what you say you'll do, success is looking for people you can trust. Not just people who are capable, but people who are accountable, people who do the right thing, not the easy thing, people who prioritize long-term integrity over short-term gain. That's the person success follows. That's the leader people rally behind. If you want to attract success, stop trying to be impressive. Start becoming dependable. Start becoming kind. Start becoming someone who makes people feel safe. Because in the end, people won't remember how many awards you won. They'll remember how you treated them. They won't remember your credentials. They'll remember your character. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you stop focusing on being impressive and start focusing on being real, you actually become someone people are drawn to. Not because you're performing, but because you're grounded. Not because you're perfect, but because you're honest. And honesty in a world full of spin is magnetic. So build your character with intention. Choose integrity over image. Choose consistency over charisma. Choose empathy over ego. Because long after the spotlight fades, your character is what remains. And when your character is strong, success doesn't need to be forced. It flows towards you naturally, quietly, powerfully, not because of what you've achieved, but because of who you've become. There's a misconception about what success looks like. We picture someone on a stage, center spotlight, applause echoing off the walls. We imagine followers, influence, authority. We equate visibility with value. But the truth is, some of the most impactful, deeply successful people aren't in the spotlight at all. They're the ones behind the scenes, the ones building quietly, leading intentionally, and serving without needing to be seen. Because real success doesn't live in the spotlight, it lives in service. That word, service, it's not glamorous, it doesn't make headlines, it doesn't win awards, but service is what transforms a person from being simply productive to being truly powerful. Not power in the sense of control or dominance, but power in the sense of impact. When you live in service of something greater than yourself, you unlock a different kind of energy, a kind of clarity, a kind of magnetism. Because people are drawn to those who put others first, not out of obligation, but out of conviction. There's something quietly compelling about a person who serves without needing recognition. They walk into a room not thinking, how do I get something from these people, but how can I contribute to these people? That simple shift in intention changes everything. It changes how you speak. It changes how you listen. It changes how you show up. When your motive is to serve, not shine, people feel safer around you. And safety builds trust. And trust builds relationships. And relationships build success, not the shallow kind, but the kind that lasts. We're conditioned to chase the spotlight, to measure our worth by visibility, to believe that louder is better, that more followers means more value, that recognition equals relevance. But some of the most admired people in the world, the ones we truly respect, didn't get there by shouting the loudest. They got there by showing up for others over and over again. They got there by being reliable, by being kind, by being generous. Not once, not when it was easy, but as a way of life. You don't need to be in the spotlight to change lives. You don't need to be the loudest voice in the room to lead. You just need to care deeply, authentically, and you need to live in alignment with that care consistently. That's the paradox of service. It's often invisible, but its impact is undeniable. And ironically, when you stop needing attention, you become someone people start paying attention to. Living in service is not about self-sacrifice or being a martyr. It's not about neglecting your needs or silencing your ambition. It's about anchoring that ambition in purpose, about seeing your work as a means to contribute, not just to climb. And when you live that way, when you wake up asking, who can I help today? What value can I create? What kind of energy am I bringing? You start to attract success in the most surprising ways. Because here's what most people don't realize. The most successful brands, the most influential leaders, the most admired individuals all have something in common. They serve. They solve real problems. They improve people's lives. They focus more on giving than getting. And that's what makes them magnetic. That's what keeps people coming back. We've all been in the presence of someone who genuinely wants to help, who listens without judgment, who supports without expecting something in return. And you know how rare that is. You know how powerful it feels. Now imagine being that person. Imagine becoming the kind of person others can count on, not because you're trying to be impressive, but because you've made service your posture, not your performance. There's a quiet confidence that comes from living in service. It's not loud or flashy, but it's undeniable. It says, I'm here for more than just myself. It says, I care about the people around me. And that kind of leadership, servant leadership, is what creates real momentum. Not because it demands attention, but because it earns respect. In the workplace, the most effective leaders aren't the ones barking orders or flaunting authority. They're the ones who ask, what do you need? How can I support you? They remove roadblocks. They create environments where people feel seen and heard. And as a result, their teams don't just perform, they thrive. Why? Because people will always go further for someone who serves them than for someone who uses them. This principle applies everywhere, in business, in relationships, in life. When you live in service, you don't need to chase success. You become a source of value, and people are drawn to value. They want to be near it. They want to partner with it. They want to build with it. That's the power of putting others first, not to diminish yourself, but to amplify your impact. It's easy to focus on outcomes, numbers, accolades, recognition. But those are byproducts. The deeper, more sustainable question is this. What are you building that serves others? What are you giving to the world that makes it better? That kind of success doesn't just make you proud, it makes you fulfilled, it makes you whole. Because in the end, people won't remember what you said about yourself. They'll remember how you made them feel. They won't remember your title or your status. They remember how you showed up for them when it mattered. And that's what legacy really is. It's the ripple effect of a life lived in service. So if you want to attract success, stop standing in the spotlight and start standing for something. Serve. Serve with your time, with your energy, with your heart. And watch how success begins to circle back to you, not because you chased it, but because you gave the world something worth following. We spend so much of our lives trying to become someone. We chase improvement. We pursue goals. We reinvent ourselves again and again, and that's good. Growth matters. But in our pursuit of becoming, we often forget something critical. Who we surround ourselves with shapes who we become. Not slightly, not occasionally, profoundly and permanently. There's a saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And while that may not be mathematically precise, it's spiritually true. The people in your circle don't just influence your mood or decisions. They influence your identity. They affect what you believe is possible. They reinforce your standards or challenge them. They either fuel your growth or quietly sabotage it. If you want to become the person who attracts success, you must be intentional about who you let close. Because proximity is powerful. You can have the best intentions, the strongest goals, the clearest values, but if you surround yourself with people who don't align with those things, you will struggle to sustain them. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. We all adapt to our environment, whether we mean to or not. We normalize what we're surrounded by. Think about it. If you're surrounded by people who complain constantly, you'll eventually start to lower your own emotional ceiling. If you spend time with people who cut corners, you'll begin to question your own standards. And on the flip side, if you spend time with people who challenge themselves, who lift others, who live with purpose and humility, you'll find yourself rising to meet them. You'll expand without force. You'll elevate without even noticing. That's the power of intentional proximity. We often treat relationships as something that just happens to us, family, co-workers, childhood friends. And while those connections may be a part of your life story, you have more choice than you think. You don't have to cut people off. But you do have to be conscious of influence. Ask yourself, who makes me feel more alive? Who challenges me to grow? Who reminds me of my values? Those are the people to lean into, because success isn't just about your habits, it's about your habitat. It's easy to underestimate just how much influence the people around us carry. We think we're making decisions independently, but in reality, we're always responding to energy. If the people you're around believe that playing small is safer than risking big, you'll shrink too. If they believe cynicism is wisdom, you'll start mistrusting hope. If they think settling is responsible, you'll begin to fear ambition. And slowly, quietly, you'll begin to drift away from your own potential. Here's the good news. Influence works both ways. Just as you are influenced, you are also influencing. You're not just being shaped, you're shaping. Every interaction is an opportunity to raise the bar, to change the temperature in the room, to lead by example. That means you don't have to wait for the perfect circle to appear. You can start becoming the kind of person you want to attract. You can build the culture around you, one choice at a time. Be the one who encourages, be the one who celebrates others' growth, be the one who speaks truth with kindness, who stands for something even when it's inconvenient. When you lead with that kind of integrity, you create a gravitational pull. You start attracting people who think the same way. And slowly your circle transforms, not through judgment or control, but through alignment. That's how real community is built, not through networking, not through chasing status, but through shared values and mutual respect. And that kind of circle doesn't just help you succeed, it keeps you grounded when you do, because success without connection is lonely, it's empty. That success shared with people who know you, who've grown with you, who remind you who you are, that's what makes it fulfilling. You don't need a huge circle, you need the right one. You need people who will challenge your blind spots with love. People who will remind you of your why when you start drifting toward distraction. People who are more interested in your becoming than your performing. Because those are the people who make success sustainable, not just externally, but internally. And it starts with a decision to be intentional. To ask, who am I becoming by being around these people? Who do I allow to influence my energy, my thinking, my goals? These aren't easy questions. They might reveal uncomfortable truths, but they are necessary if you want to become the kind of person who attracts success, not just temporarily, but consistently. You see, success is not an isolated pursuit. It's a relational journey. We're shaped in community, we grow in relationship, and if you're not growing, if you're not stretching, if you're not becoming more of who you're meant to be, take a look around. Not to blame others, but to recalibrate yourself, to choose intentionally, to surround yourself with people who see your light and reflect it back to you. Become the kind of person who creates that experience for others too. Be the one who listens with presence, who affirms others' worth, who holds space for big dreams and even bigger doubts. When you live that way, you don't just attract success, you multiply it. Because you're not walking alone anymore. You're walking with people who believe in you, who mirror your best self, and who make the journey worth it. That's the truth about success. It doesn't happen in isolation, it happens in proximity. And proximity is a choice. So choose wisely, choose deeply, choose people who make you better simply by being around them. And then become that kind of person for someone else. Because in the end, the company you keep becomes the compass you follow. And the right circle doesn't just support your path to success, it becomes a part of the reason you got there.